The banana sitting on your kitchen counter right now could be one of the most powerful medicines your body has ever been offered. And I know how that sounds. I know you've heard sweeping claims before, but stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you is not opinion. It is not marketing. It is peer-reviewed, laboratory-confirmed, clinically observed science. And in my 30 years of practicing internal medicine, the more I've studied this humble yellow fruit, the more I've come to believe that we have been criminally underestimating it. Most people over 60 reach for a banana because it's easy, because it doesn't require cooking, because their grandchildren like them. What they don't realize is that every single time they peel one open, they are triggering a cascade of biological events inside their body. Events that touch the heart, the brain, the muscles, the gut, the immune system, and even the very length of their cellular life. And today, I'm going to walk you through all 7 of them. My name doesn't matter as much as what I've seen. Over 3 decades of medicine, I've sat across from thousands of patients, men and women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I've watched what happens when nutrition is taken seriously versus when it's ignored. The difference is not subtle, it is profound. It is the difference between a 74-year-old man who still gardens, still travels, still laughs easily, and one who struggles to climb a single flight of stairs. And food, more than almost any other variable, sits at the center of that difference. So today we're talking about one food, just one. A food so common, so affordable, so available, that most people have never once paused to think about what it is actually doing inside their body. We're talking about the banana. We're going to count down from number 7 to number 1, the 7 remarkable things that happen to your body when you eat just one banana every single day. And I want to warn you, by the time we reach number 1, you may never look at this fruit the same way again. The most important thing I'll share today comes near the very end. So stay with me, because this one in particular caught even veteran researchers off guard when the data came in. Let's begin our countdown together. Here is something that many of my patients over 60 have never been told plainly. High blood pressure is not just a heart problem. It is a brain problem, a kidney problem, a vision problem, a problem that quietly, over years and decades, erodes the very architecture of your body's most vital organs. And most people manage it exclusively through medication. Now, medication has its place. I'm not here to tell anyone to stop their prescriptions. But what I am here to tell you is that one of the most powerful natural modulators of blood pressure is potassium. And a single medium banana contains approximately 422 milligrams of it. Why does potassium matter so much? Here's the simple version. Your blood vessels, the arteries and veins carrying blood throughout your entire body, are wrapped in smooth muscle tissue. That tissue is constantly receiving signals. Contract, relax, contract, relax. Sodium tells it to contract and tighten. Potassium tells it to relax and open. And in the modern American diet, most people over 60 are consuming far too much sodium and not nearly enough potassium. The result is a kind of chronic tension inside the vascular system, a tension that drives blood pressure up and keeps it there. When you begin eating one banana a day, you start shifting that ratio. You give the body more of the signal it needs to relax. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology followed over 90,000 postmenopausal women and found that those with the highest potassium intake had a 27% lower risk of stroke, including ischemic stroke, the kind caused by a blood clot blocking blood flow to the brain. 27%. That is not a small difference. I had a patient, I'll call her Dorothy, 68 years old, retired school principal from Tennessee. She came to me with borderline hypertension, readings consistently around 138/88. We talked about diet. She started eating a banana every morning with her coffee. 3 months later, she was at 124/79. No medication change. She was amazed. I wasn't. The body responds when you give it what it needs. And here is a practical tip that matters. If you're taking certain blood pressure medications, particularly ACE inhibitors or potassium-sparing diuretics, have a conversation with your doctor first, because potassium levels need to be monitored in those cases. But for the vast majority of people, one banana a day is not just safe, it is profoundly beneficial for cardiovascular health. Now, blood pressure is important, but what happens to your digestion, and I mean deep cellular digestive function, is even more surprising. That's coming up next. In the last 15 years, science has undergone a quiet revolution in how we understand human health. And at the center of that revolution is a discovery that would have seemed like science fiction when I was in medical school: the gut microbiome. Inside your intestinal tract right now, there are approximately 38 trillion microorganisms. bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microscopic life forms. That community, your microbiome, influences your immune system, your mood, your inflammation levels, your metabolism, and even the clarity of your thinking. Research from institutions like the Karolinska Institute in Sweden and the Broad Institute at MIT has shown that the composition of your gut microbiome may be one of the single greatest predictors of long-term health and longevity. And as we age, that microbiome changes, often not for the better. Beneficial bacterial strains decline. Inflammatory species increase. The gut lining, that thin critical barrier between your digestive tract and your bloodstream, becomes more permeable. Doctors sometimes call this leaky gut. It contributes to systemic inflammation, joint pain, fatigue, immune dysregulation, and cognitive fog. Many of my older patients describe a kind of generalized, not quite right feeling that they can't fully explain. More often than not, it traces back to gut health. Here is where the banana becomes remarkable. Bananas, especially those that are slightly underripe, still with a hint of green, are one of the richest natural sources of something called resistant starch. Resistant starch doesn't get digested in the small intestine the way regular starch does. Instead, it travels intact to the large intestine, where it becomes food, literally fuel, for your beneficial bacteria. Specifically, it feeds a family of bacteria called Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus. These are the strains associated with reduced inflammation, improved immune function, and better mood. When they flourish, they produce short-chain fatty acids, compounds like butyrate, that literally nourish the cells lining your colon, strengthen the gut barrier, and reduce inflammatory signaling throughout the body. A study from the University of Reading in the United Kingdom found that regular consumption of resistant starch significantly increased populations of Bifidobacterium in participants within just 4 weeks. 4 weeks. Think about what that means for someone in their 70s dealing with chronic low-grade inflammation, with joint stiffness every morning, with a digestive system that no longer feels quite reliable, with an immune system that seems to overreact or underreact at the wrong moments. The gut is often the starting point of the problem, and it can be the starting point of the healing. Practical tip: if you want to maximize the resistant starch content of your banana, eat it when it still has some green on the peel. The riper and more yellow-brown the banana gets, the more that resistant starch converts to simple sugar. Both have value, but for gut health specifically, slightly underripe is superior. But here's what comes next. And this one touches something that I know worries many of my patients more than almost anything else. Stay with me. Over the last few years, and especially since passing 60, have you noticed a shift in your emotional baseline? A kind of heaviness that wasn't there before? A reduced enthusiasm for things that used to bring you joy? Mornings that feel harder to begin? A low-level anxiety that seems to hover at the edges of your daily life? You are not alone, and you are not imagining it. Here is what is happening biologically. Serotonin, the neurotransmitter most closely associated with mood stability, emotional resilience, and a sense of well-being, is produced from a single amino acid called tryptophan. As we age, the dietary intake of tryptophan in most Americans drops. At the same time, the enzymes responsible for converting tryptophan to serotonin become less efficient. The result is a gradual decline in serotonin activity that contributes to the emotional flatness, depression, and anxiety so common in adults over 60. Bananas contain tryptophan, but that's only part of the story, and it's not even the most important part. Bananas also contain vitamin B6. A single banana provides about 25% of your daily B6, and B6 is the key cofactor for serotonin conversion. Without enough B6, tryptophan sits at the gate but cannot get through. With adequate B6, the conversion happens efficiently. Beyond serotonin, bananas also contain dopamine precursors, specifically actual dopamine, which functions as a powerful antioxidant, and tyrosine. A study from the Harvard-cited School of Public Health found meaningful correlations between consistent fruit intake and lower rates of depressive symptoms in adults over 65. I think of a patient named Harold, 73. He wasn't clinically depressed, but he described himself as running on empty. No motivation, no spark. He made several changes, but one small one he mentioned months later was that he'd started eating a banana every morning because his late wife used to. He said, almost embarrassed to admit it, that he felt lighter, that mornings felt more possible. Was it the banana alone? Of course not. But nutrition is one thread in a complex weave, and it matters more than most people understand. If you're combining your banana with a small handful of walnuts, a source of omega-3s, you are giving your brain a remarkably powerful morning reset. Now, we've talked about mood, but what's coming next is the one that surprises my patients most: how what you eat affects the speed of muscle deterioration. Beginning around age 30, the human body starts losing muscle mass at a rate of 3 to 8% per decade. After 60, that rate accelerates. Doctors call it sarcopenia. You might experience it as weakness in the legs, difficulty rising from a chair, a grip that isn't what it used to be, a general sense of physical fragility that creeps in quietly, and then one day isn't quiet anymore. Sarcopenia is one of the greatest predictors of falls, hospitalization, loss of independence, and early mortality in older adults. It is not a cosmetic issue. It is a life expectancy issue. A single banana contains approximately 32 milligrams of magnesium, and magnesium is essential to muscle function at the most fundamental level. It is required for the release of energy from ATP, the molecule that powers every muscular contraction your body makes. Without adequate magnesium, muscles fatigue faster, cramp more easily, and recover more slowly. Studies from the Journal of the American Geriatric Society have shown that magnesium deficiency is associated with reduced muscle performance and increased risk of sarcopenia in older adults. Second, the carbohydrates. Many people over 60 have developed a deep suspicion of carbohydrates, but the complex carbohydrates in a banana serve a different purpose. When you consume protein, your muscles can only use it if insulin is present to drive amino acids into cells. A banana provides a gentle insulin spike that enhances this uptake. A clinical trial from the University of São Paulo found that older adults who maintained higher potassium and magnesium intake, the two minerals most concentrated in bananas, showed significantly better preservation of muscle mass over a 5-year period. Practical guidance: eat your banana within 45 minutes of a workout or protein-rich meal. A banana with eggs or Greek yogurt works synergistically. If this is helping you, I'd ask you to subscribe. Not for me, but for the people you care about who deserve informed decisions. More of this content is coming. Subscribe. There is a sleep crisis happening in America among adults over 60, and it is largely invisible because so many people have simply accepted poor sleep as an inevitable feature of getting older. They wake at 3 a.m. and cannot return to sleep. They fall asleep fine but rise feeling unrested. They experience a kind of shallow, fragmented sleep that leaves them exhausted by midday but wired at night. This is not inevitable, and much of it has a biological explanation and a biological solution. Here's what happens to sleep as we age. The production of melatonin, the hormone that signals the body that it is time to sleep, declines significantly after 60. The brain's sensitivity to adenosine also decreases. And critically, the production of serotonin, which is the direct chemical precursor to melatonin, also falls. The pathway goes tryptophan to serotonin to melatonin. Your brain cannot make adequate melatonin without first making adequate serotonin, and it cannot make adequate serotonin without adequate tryptophan and B6. A daily banana supports every step of that pathway, but there is more. Bananas also contain magnesium, and magnesium's role in sleep is one of the most well-documented in nutritional science. Magnesium activates the parasympathetic nervous system and binds to GABA receptors in the brain. GABA is the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, the one that quiets neural activity. A randomized controlled trial found that older adults who supplemented with magnesium experienced significant improvements in sleep efficiency, sleep time, and early morning awakening. I want to tell you about Eleanor, a 76-year-old retired librarian from Vermont. She came to me for fatigue. She was sleeping 7 hours a night, but she never felt rested. She described the quality of her sleep as like floating on the surface of water, never going under. We worked through her whole health picture, but one specific change she made was to eat a small banana before bed. Within 3 weeks, she told me her sleep felt different, deeper, that she was dreaming again, which she hadn't done in months, that she was waking up without immediately dreading the day. Sleep is not a luxury. Sleep is the time when your brain clears toxic protein buildup, when your immune system resets, and when cellular repair happens throughout the entire body. Every night of poor sleep is a night of deferred maintenance on the most complex biological machine in the known universe. A banana before bed is a remarkably effective contribution to that maintenance. Now we arrive at number 2, and this one touches something that I know every person watching this video thinks about. Something that may be the deepest fear of growing older. Cognitive decline, memory loss, the fog that sometimes settles over the mind in ways that feel frightening and unfamiliar. The moment you walk into a room and cannot remember why. These experiences are among the most feared aspects of aging. Alzheimer's disease alone affects approximately 6.7 million Americans over the age of 65. It is one of the most devastating crises of our time. But here is what I want you to understand. Cognitive decline is not simply an inevitable fate, it is a process. And like most biological processes, it is influenced by what we eat and how we care for our brains. Let's start with oxidative stress. Every time your cells produce energy, they generate byproducts called free radicals. These can damage cellular structures, including the delicate neurons of the brain. Bananas contain a meaningful spectrum of antioxidants, dopamine, catechins, and various phenolic compounds. These are associated with reduced markers of oxidative stress in the blood. But the most powerful mechanism may be BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for the brain. It supports existing neurons and strengthens synaptic connections. In the aging brain, BDNF levels fall, but both tryptophan and vitamin B6, present in every banana, are precursors to neurochemical pathways that upregulate BDNF production. A study from Rush University Medical Center found that higher daily intake of flavonoid-rich fruits was associated with slower rates of cognitive decline by the equivalent of being 3.5 years younger. 3.5 years. That is the difference between recognizing your grandchildren's faces without hesitation and not being sure. That is the difference between independence and dependence. I also want to mention a compound found in the banana peel called lunasin. It's studied for its potential role in epigenetic regulation, reducing cellular inflammation and supporting neuronal health. Science is still emerging. And now we arrive at number 1. This final piece of information, this number 1 effect of eating a banana every single day, is the one that I find most quietly astonishing. It determining how long we remain well. In 2009, Elizabeth Blackburn won the Nobel Prize for her discovery of telomeres. At the end of every chromosome in every cell, there is a protective cap called a telomere. Imagine the plastic tip at the end of a shoelace. Its job is to protect the chromosome from fraying. Every time a cell divides, those telomeres get slightly shorter. When they become too short, the cell becomes dormant or dies. Telomere length is now one of the most studied biomarkers of biological aging. People whose telomeres shorten more slowly tend to live longer. They are, in a very real biological sense, aging more slowly. And here is what science is beginning to show. Chronic oxidative stress and systemic inflammation are the 2 primary drivers of accelerated telomere shortening. Every day of poor diet or disrupted sleep shortens them faster. And what does a banana address? Oxidative stress, through its antioxidants, inflammation, through its support of the gut, sleep disruption, through its magnesium, vascular stress, through its potassium. They converge on this final truth. A study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that consistent consumption of higher dietary antioxidants was associated with measurably longer telomeres. It represents one of the most modifiable factors in aging. I think of a patient, a 79-year-old man named Vincent, a retired marine biologist from the Pacific Northwest. He asked, "Is there anything I can do to make sure my body keeps up with my mind?" His mind still felt young, curious, hungry for life. He was afraid his body would not keep pace. We talked about small, consistent choices, about the fact that the body, even at 79, is not static. It is a process. He left with a list. At the top was something simple, something he could pick up at any grocery store on the way home. 1 banana. Every day. He came back 6 months later with better energy, better sleep, and a feeling that he's in this for the long haul. That is what this is about. Not a magic cure, but a daily, consistent, compounding signal to your body that you are taking care of it, that you are choosing to support the biological systems that are keeping you alive. A single banana costs less than 30 cents. It takes less than 30 seconds to eat. And if you do it every day, it may be one of the most impactful nutritional decisions of your later life. I want to be honest with you about one thing before we close. No single food is a cure. No single food prevents all disease or reverses all damage. But the pattern of daily choices, the accumulation of small, consistent, science-informed decisions over months and years, is where true health is built or lost. The banana is one thread in that pattern, an important one, a surprisingly powerful one. And now I want to hear from you. What health concern worries you most as you move through this stage of life? Is it your heart, your memory, your energy, your joints, your sleep? Leave it in the comments below. I read them, and the answers your community gives help me understand what to research and explain next. This channel exists for one reason: to bring you the kind of clear, honest, evidence-based health information that you deserve to have, and that you rarely get in a 10-minute doctor's appointment. If that mission matters to you, subscribe, share this video with someone who needs it, and take care of yourself today. Because you have more years ahead of you than you might believe, and they can be extraordinary.